Welcome back to the Ride with the Knights YouTube channel. I'm Josh. Today I'm joined by my good friend Dylan here at the Moto Expert shop in Spanish Fork, Utah. Dylan is a technician here, and today we're going to cover 3 tips, 3 things that all riders should do, whether they have a new bike or a new to them, a used bike. These are 3 tips that you should do to make sure that your suspension's working properly, that nothing's binding, and that you have the best ride right out of the box. So let's jump into it. So the first tip we're going to talk about today is all regarding the front end setup, specifically your fork height, the torque specs on your triple clamp, and then aligning the front wheel properly. So all of these things are going to greatly affect whether or not the front forks are working properly, and if done incorrectly, can cause a lot of binding on the front end. So the first thing we're gonna wanna look at, if you have a brand new motorcycle or again, a used bike, new to you, we're gonna make sure that the fork height is set properly. So just line them both up as best you can. You can take a pair of calipers and measure it and just line up the fork height to wherever you need to set it up. There are a couple different options there. The second thing is, based off of your owner's manual, make sure that you torque the triple clamps down to the correct torque setting, because if this is done incorrectly and you over torque, then you can actually clamp down on the internal components, and that's gonna bind, and that's gonna provide negative feedback to how your front end is working. And the third thing there with the front end is just making sure that that front wheel is lined up properly. This is, we're gonna dive here a little bit deeper, showing you exactly one technique to make sure that this works out and that it lines up properly. But if you don't line your front wheel up, it can cause a little bit of binding on the fork legs. So those are all things that you're gonna wanna check with your new bike to make sure that the front end is set up correctly with your suspension.
I'm gonna show you my method. There's many other methods, but this is what works for me. This is what I use. Slide the axle through, take your axle nut, thread that on there, just get it snug. And then I'll tighten up this left side. You can just do 1 bolt. You don't need much on there, just enough to torque the axle nut. Once we get the axle nut torqued, I then go ahead and tighten this side. And once you get that side torqued, you'll come over to this other side, loosen this one back up. So now both of these are loose, they're just hand tight. I'll then pump the brake up, spin the front wheel, and just jolt the brake. Really good, you can do it a couple times. What we're looking for here is if this axle's floating, so you can see it's moving there. When you see people have forks on a bind, it'll usually be pushed all the way in like that, or you can see them where they're pushed out like that. So we want to make sure that's centralized on there and everything's free floating. All right, the second tip I'd like to look at on a new bike, if I were to get a new bike or if any of you were to get a new bike, is a sag. Sag is going to be a huge factor in balancing out the chassis. If you have too much sag, it's going to feel like a chopper. If you don't have enough sag, it's going to feel like the front end is very heavy and weighted. And now we're going to show you our favorite way of checking rider sag.
We like to measure sag using the method taught by Racetech. Any type of suspension will always have a certain amount of stiction. To overcome this when measuring sag, take 2 measurements and average the difference between the 2. The first measurement, you will raise the shock up and allow it to compress down under its own weight. The second measurement, you will push the shock down and allow it to rebound. You will likely notice a difference between these 2 measurements, and that's normal. This is caused by the friction from all of your suspension components. Simply take the 2 measurements and meet right in the middle or average the 2. First, measure static sag. Static sag should be about 10% of your total travel, or somewhere around 35 to 40 millimeters. Next, measure rider sag. Rider sag should be right around 33% of your total travel, or somewhere around 95 to 105 millimeters. However, this will vary between year, make, and model. The most important thing is consistency. Be sure to use the same method every time you measure sag.
The third thing that you're gonna wanna check when you get a new bike is your baseline clicker settings. So on a dirt bike, on an off-road dirt bike, you have a lot of different clickers. You have compression clickers, rebound clickers, And on the shock, you also have compression and rebound clickers. So there's a lot of tunability, a lot of different things you can change. And whether you have a brand new dirt bike that has components straight from the factory or a used bike, you're gonna wanna check this because we've seen them off in both cases. Even when they're shipped directly from the manufacturer, the clicker settings can be off. So it's always good to just go through your clicker settings, take out a notepad or your cell phone and just write down kind of a baseline setting where you wanna start, usually somewhere in the middle if you have an idea, and just get that baseline so you have it measured. From that point, you can move forward in your tuning process, you can take notes, and you can always have something to refer to fall back on. If you don't like the changes you made, you can go back to those settings. So in summary, the reason why you're gonna wanna check those three things is pretty much just to confirm right off the bat that your suspension components are working properly and that the geometry on your motorcycle is balanced correctly. Before you go out and ride and start making assumptions about how the forks are performing or different things, it's always good to just run back through these three things. And again, that applies to new motorcycles, brand new motorcycles off the showroom floor, and new to you or used bikes.
These are great steps to take before going out and spending a bunch of money on your big investment. They're pretty much free and you can do them from the comfort of your garage.
If you guys have gone through these three steps and you're still struggling with a little bit of suspension discomfort, then go ahead and visit themotoexperts.com or call the number below. They'll get you taken care of. On their website, they have the opportunity to fill out a little form to answer some of your questions. They handle all different suspension manufacturers, Showa, KYB, WP, and have a lot of different options for you, even if it's just getting the right spring rate, if it's doing a complete revalve, or looking at different conversions, we can solve those problems here at the Moto Experts. If you guys like this content and you're interested in learning more about dirt bikes or improving your off-road riding skills, then go ahead and visit ridewiththeknights.com. There we have a free 1-hour training where we teach everything that we've learned about off-road motorcycle riding. It's literally jam-packed full of everything we've experienced and can help make a difference in your riding today. So go ahead, visit ridewiththeknights.com. Don't forget to subscribe and we'll see you in the next video.